Everybody, welcome back to Late Night Review. I'm Elizabeth, and tonight we have another deep dive into the Menendez trial. So we're going to have more testimony, more insights, and more of the prosecution, honestly, twisting the narrative to fit their version of events. We're going to talk about shocking stories of neglect, abuse, and major contradictions in witness statements, which at this point really shouldn't be too shocking. We will finish off with testimony of some of the friends of the Menendez family, and trust me, this testimony is eye-opening. But like I said, should we really be shocked with anything at this point? Anyway, welcome back. First up, we have Charlene Elmore, and she was the school nurse at Eric's school. She testified that Eric frequently complained of headaches and stomach aches, and honestly, that makes total sense to me because when kids are dealing with stress or fear or trauma, it often manifests physically. And I remember having unexplained stomach aches in 4th grade. And I didn't know why, but my mom figured it out. And the problem was my teacher, and she switched me out of that class into another one. And problem was solved. Like, my stomach aches went away. And that always stuck with me. So I'm not surprised that Eric is having similar types of manifestations. In his case, obviously, it was something that was going on at home. So next on the stand is Pamela Lacuzzi. And she was an executive assistant and secretary for Richard Klein. And Pamela's testimony, well, she did not hold back. She testified about Dr. Oziel. Yes, that Dr. Oziel. And the fact that actually Dr. Oziel attached himself to Richard Klein's created business. Like, he created a business called Automax, and Dr. Oziel attached himself to that. But here's when things get messy. When when he ended up in the hospital, Oziel took advantage of the situation and started talking a bunch of crap to all the employees. And, of course, when he badmouthed Richard, it resulted in half of the company's employees leaving with Dr. Oziel and abandoning Richard. Now, the interesting about Pamela is, like I said, she didn't hold back in her testimony, and she described Oziel as greedy, malicious, deceitful, and manipulative. She said he brainwashes vulnerable people and has no ethics or morals and is a professional liar. This was all her description of him. And get this, she even said Oziel makes David Koresh look like a saint. That's a pretty bold statement, but given everything we've learned about Oziel, can we really argue with that? And just in case it wasn't clear enough, Pamela said that after knowing him for over a year, she could confidently say that Oziel has the reputation of a snake. I mean, like, wow. Just when you think Oziel couldn't get any worse, there he goes. Cue the video. Next up is Emmanuel Zotolo. I think that's the way you say it. I probably said it wrong. But this is where things get weird. The defense called Emmanuel to the stand, but why, I have no idea. I guess it's just because he lived near the Menendez home in California. They're in the neighborhood. And he testified that he heard the popping noises the night of the murders, but that he thought they were fireworks, like many people in that neighborhood thought. And so he didn't call the police. That's it. I have no idea what defense was trying to prove here, but maybe I missed something, but that was his testimony. So the next one on the stand is Teresita Baralt, and she is Jose's eldest sister. And her testimony, honestly, it was absolutely heartbreaking because she said when Eric was just 1.5 years old, he would cross the street by himself to go to her house. Did you hear what I just said? He was 1.5 years old and he would cross the street by himself to go to Teresita's house. And he was still in diapers at this time, people. And she said that he would knock at the door when he got there and that he would show up, rain or shine. And sometimes he was covered in mud and his diaper falling off of him. The really sad part is she said she would clean him up and feed him food and wait until Kitty or Lyle would come and get him. And sadly, whenever she would call Kitty to tell her Eric was at her house, Kitty would deny it. She would insist that Eric was home safe in his crib. Then she would go and check the crib and realize, nope, he was gone. Then Teresita talked about Lyle, and she was saying that Lyle was always a big spender before his parents' murders and after. And he always paid for friends, always covered meals at restaurants, and was basically extremely generous. But anyway, so here's where things get interesting. Remember how prosecution tried to paint the picture that the Menendezes, Mr. and Mrs. Menendezes, their death, that Lyle was after their death, that Lyle was out buying condos and cars and all this other stuff, spending all sorts of money. Well, Teresita actually was the one that helped him purchase the condo, but it was at the request of Jose and Kitty. So this was all taking place before the death of Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. And she also said that Kitty was calling her a lot to help her get the condo furnished and ready when the condo closed, and she was able to bring furnishing in and Lyle would be able to move into the home. So again, this was more of prosecution just trying to twist it to make it look like these boys killed their parents for the money and then went on these shopping sprees for condos. Not true. Now, as for Kitty, Teresita said that she was incredibly loving. Isn't that crazy? It was actually towards her pets, not her boys. She said Kitty never showed the same kind of care towards her sons. Another thing is Teresita also noticed Kitty always putting alcohol in her coffee. Not the first time we heard that. Next, we have Peter Cano, and he is Marta Cano's now ex-husband. At the time they were married, but this is her ex-husband. Now, Peter testified that he personally witnessed Jose violently abusing Lyle. He said one day Lyle was running around, and I guess Lyle didn't hear Jose tell him to slow down or stop or quiet or something. And he said Jose grabbed Lyle and stared at him, and that Lyle was so scared with the way Jose looked at him that he peed his pants. Now, did that stop Jose and make him rethink his actions? No, of course it didn't. In fact, to make matters worse, he grabbed Lyle by the arm and drug him into a room and then punched him with a closed fist on his chest. And Peter witnessed this and he saw it and he said it was a hard hit. And Peter then spoke up to him. And Peter said he told Jose a few things, but that he didn't want to repeat them in the courtroom. But what he did tell us is that he basically told him that's no way to be raising a child. And this made Jose really stop and think. If you believed that, then you haven't been paying any attention to any of these reviews. So after he told him this, Jose responded by saying, well, if you don't like it, you can leave my house. And so that's what he did. He said he left and he didn't ever return. Next on the stand is Janet Stoltzfus. I know I probably said that wrong. Stoltzfus. This is Janet, and she was a teacher at Princeton Day School. She was actually Eric's 9th grade Bible teacher because, yes, it was a required class at this school. She described Eric as a very sad child who didn't really have anyone to talk to in class. I mean, it was simple but telling. Very short testimony. Next was Dr. Barbara Zussman. She was Eric's drama teacher. And honestly, this was another not much information witness. All she was asked was like what kind of student Eric was, and that's kind of it. Why defense again called her to the stand, I guess maybe to show that Eric wasn't this phenomenal acting student like prosecution tried to make him out to be, because they were trying to say that they're just acting this all out. And Eric was this great drama student who won awards. because of his acting skills. And Barbara says, yes, he got an award. Eric was really just another student like anyone else. So, I mean, I guess there was reason to put her on the stand, but like I said, there wasn't much that came out of that other than those things. And maybe that was the purpose of her testimony. So the next one here is Kevin Whalen. So I want to talk about Kevin Whalen. He's also known as Casey, so AKA Casey. Quite a bit of interesting information that came out of his testimony. So he was one of Eric's close friends in California and personally knew Craig Signorelli. Now, do you remember who Craig was? He was the guy who wore the wire for the police and then went to dinner with Eric and then tried to get him to confess to killing his parents. Do you remember this guy? Kevin said that Eric and Craig used to be close, but when Eric started getting closer to Kevin, Craig became jealous. And Eric went to the point where he had taken a nickname away from Craig that he had given to him and gave it to Kevin instead. Then Kevin talked about the day he picked up Eric from the airport after his parents' funeral in New Jersey. Eric asked him to drive him to the Menendez house to pick up some things and meet someone there. And so that is what Kevin did. He picked him up from the airport, drove him over to his house, and they waited for this person to meet him there. In the Menendez's neighborhood, there's a security checkpoint. So when they had pulled up to that checkpoint, a guard handed Eric a mysterious note. And it was from Lyle, but not in Lyle's handwriting. And that made both of them uneasy, but they continued to the house anyway. And so after they got to the house, they waited. After a while, the computer expert arrived to work on the computer that was located in Jose and Kitty's bedroom. So Kevin and Eric actually stayed in the room while the man worked. And Kevin at one point got bored from standing behind the guy while he was working and watching him, that he went and actually laid down or sat down on Jose and Kitty's bed and played with a tennis ball, just tossing it up in the air just to pass time. And Miss Abramson asked him questions about this event and about Craig Signorelli specifically, because Craig had testified, if you remember, he had testified that he was at the Menendez's home at this time when this computer expert went there. And Kevin was adamant that Craig was not there that day. And he even said, what he actually said was, no, absolutely not. That is quite interesting. We have Craig on the stand saying he was there. And moreover, as in Kevin also said he doesn't even have any memory of a woman being there with this computer guy, much less a pregnant woman. So yeah, again, all another lie. So after picking up Eric from the airport, going to the Menendez home to get the clothes and meet up with the computer guy, they left Eric's home and went to Kevin's home because that is where Eric stayed from the time he was picked up at the airport until Kevin left to start his college semester. So on the ride over to Kevin's house after they left Eric's house, Kevin said that Eric was confused because the will was missing from the computer and he just didn't understand why. And Kevin said that when they got to Kevin's house, Eric attempted to call Lyle, but couldn't get a hold of him. He didn't answer. And so then he tried contacting his aunt. He was also unable to get a hold of her as well. Kevin described Craig as not being an honest young man. Oh, and to top it all off, Kevin said Craig once bragged to him that he had sold the rights to the Menendez story and was going to make millions of dollars from it. This is what Craig is out there saying about his friend Eric. Kathleen Burlow Cohen, she is Kevin's mom. I believe that defense put Kevin's mom, Kathleen, on the stand to just confirm her son's testimony because she remembers hearing Eric talking to Lyle on the phone once he got a hold of him and was telling him about the will being missing on the computer. And Kathleen said she remembers seeing Craig Signorelli at a football game sometime after the murders and recalled Craig bragging to her that he was involved in writing a screenplay about the Menendez murders and felt that he was going to be making lots of money selling it. So next up is Faith Goldsmith. And she knew Jose and Kitty Menendez before they even moved to California. So she actually met Kitty when they were both third grade teachers in the Bronx. And she described Kitty as a fearless individual, except for when it came to parenting. Now, one memory that stood out for her was when she saw Kitty repeatedly shoving a 10-year-old Lyle into a swimming pool. And he kept saying the water was too cold, but Kitty didn't stop. And it wasn't until the coach finally spoke up that she backed off of Lyle. There was also the story about Eric, and at just 2 years old, he was found wandering the streets alone, and a stranger actually stopped the traffic to get him to safety, and he brought him into a nearby business. But when Kitty was informed, like, hey, here's your kid, it was out there on the street, it didn't seem to upset her at all. Furthermore, Faith also recalled a shoe shopping trip where Eric had got hurt. And even after she and the store employee urged Kitty to take him to the ER, she brushed it off. And it turns out Eric did in fact end up needing stitches. One thing Faith made clear was that Jose and Kitty were competitive about everything, even board games. She said Kitty would cheat and then deny it, even when she would call Kitty out about it. Faith had no problem watching the Menendez boys, but she refused to let Kitty watch her own kids because she did not trust Kitty's parenting. I mean, I can see why. I mean, look how she responded when Eric was found out on the street wandering, or when Eric hurt himself and needed stitches. So, I mean, totally understandable that she just didn't trust her watching her kids. Jessica Goldsmith was one of Faith's daughters, and she is up next. So this is Jessica Goldsmith, and she is Faith's daughter, the one we were just talking about. She recalls her and her family visiting the Menendez home often, and she said it was like 1 to 2 times a week they would visit. And she noticed something very strange, in her opinion, that no one in the family ever really talked about Eric. She said it was always about Lyle. She said she also didn't even realize Eric was such a good or talented athlete because his family just never talked about him. Jessica also recalls a disturbing memory of Lyle hanging from the stairs crying because he couldn't get down. And Jose looked up at him, and instead of helping him down, he told him, stop crying and act like a man. Then he started jabbing Lyle in the stomach while he's hanging on for his life. And he told him he was gonna stay there until he started acting like a man and stop crying. And Kitty, well, she just stood there and watched and never said a word or even gave an attempt to help Lyle down. Jessica also remembers a quite heartwarming memory of Lyle. She said he was protective, especially of her little sister, who was the youngest out of all of them, and was also not a good player. She said when they played soccer, no one ever wanted Jessica's little sister on their team because she was the smallest and obviously not good. But Lyle always picked her and wanted to hype her up by saying, you're the best player, that's why I picked you, and we're gonna win. And she said yes, they would win the game. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight. More abuse, more neglect, and more holes in the prosecution's case. What do you guys think about Craig Signorelli's contradictions? And how about Peter Cano's testimony? Does that change the way you see Jose? Let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to give this video a like. It truly does help get this video into YouTube's algorithms and suggests it for others to watch, and I would greatly appreciate that. Until next time, have a good night. Bye.